There we go. You can hear me?
Hello, Tom.
Hi. It said
Good.
something about even if I wasn't prepared, I could join the meeting. Here I am,
Yeah.
unprepared.
I'm not really prepared either, but let's give a minute, see if anyone else drops in. I have no idea if anyone else is coming, but good to see you again. It's been a while. How have you been?
Great health and worried about our friends in Ukraine.
Yeah, that's not that terribly far away from you, is it?
No, and I spent a lot of time in Ukraine. So, I mean, lecturing in conferences, teaching at universities and things. So I know a lot of people there. I've been to many of the major towns they talk about, Lviv, yeah, etc. So it's kind of personal.
Yeah. Wow. Hey, Alonzo.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us. So I'm going to keep this short because last year, in a fit of optimism, I purchased a 1-year Zoom license, and I have not been using it very much, so I let it lapse. And so I'm back down to the personal Zoom license, which means we have 40 minutes, which is probably just as well because I have a lot going on. But I appreciate you're all taking the time to join me. So as I may have mentioned, I am basically trying to implement Datocracy sort of at NATO, the company where Alonzo and I work. And this is the first time I have tried to build a data platform from scratch for an organization. I've done it for small teams, but that is a well-defined problem because you have one boss, one success criteria, one use case. And the complexity of the situation is challenging, to put it mildly. But the really interesting thing that I was complaining about to my boss a couple of weeks ago is that I don't even have language to talk about what it is that I am doing. So I thought this is the sort of random philosophical, practical question that I could use the brain trust here to help me with. And the specific symptom that I've run into is that people keep saying, oh, we need a report on how we're doing in X. And in a well-defined process with a well-run organization where everything's already happening and being tracked, it's just a matter of generating a report, of pulling the existing data and formatting it. But when you are doing something you have never done before with people who have never actually had automated tools to help them, there is a huge pile of work that needs to happen before you can generate a report. And I was just trying to wrap my head around kind of what that feels like. So you have to define the problem, you have to create business processes, you have to train and automate the different steps, you have to ensure workers have the data to do their job. Then you have to collect data at various steps. You have to persist the data appropriately. And then you have to normalize the data. And only then can you generate a report. Does this sound like a, is this a familiar situation to any of you? Just out of curiosity.
Yep.
Yeah. And what
Sounds about right.
Yeah, and what's funny is that, like, I don't even know what to call the first 7 steps. Like, because it feels like it's a thing that needs to be done a lot. Right? You have a problem you're trying to solve. You need to get the people and the data and the processes in alignment so that you can do the work, track the work, and improve the work, right? And yet, like, the words that I've played with to try and describe this feel very weak. Like we have, possible terms are like this is, workflows, business process reengineering. You remember that from the 90s when I was an marketing management consultant. So there's lots of terms, I guess, reporting. And I feel, so one thing I wanted to see is like, is there already a term of art to describe this that I'm just ignorant about?
I just dug up something. Let's see, I'll put it in the chat. Now, basically, this sounds like one hypothesis for the answer is what I call my Evo process, because this sounds like a description of my Evo process.
Ooh.
I've got a standard for it. I've got a chapter in the competitive engineering book and some other stuff, lots of stuff. But that gives a terminology for everything. It gives a well-defined process in the competitive engineering book. And so the question is, did I totally misunderstand your question? Hey, you're fast. Yep. There it is. So this is
project. So right. So this is the interesting thing. And I don't know, right? Because when I hear project management, I hear, in my cultural context at Apple, the project manager is the person who like hosts a meeting and sits down every week with the team leads and tracks what they're doing to make sure that stuff's getting done.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a plausible definition of project management?
No.
Ah.
It is a traditional and dangerous definition. So stuff getting done is not the point. The point is results are happening of the kind you have specified in your objectives. Even if very little stuff gets done, but if the results accidentally pop in, you're making progress. Okay. In other words, the idea that we must do stuff and work and yet not really measure progress towards our primary goals, that's silly. So you're just measuring stuff getting done, but you're very likely to have what is known as a failed project. That means lots of stuff was done, but it has failed to deliver what people are expecting from the project. And 30 to 60% of all IT projects are of that nature, according to, Google it, failed IT project.
Yeah, yes, it is almost a trope.
Yeah. Actually, yeah, I couldn't agree more with what he said. In fact, it's sort of a like a process versus content a sort of thing. If you focus too much on the process and just keeping things done in an organized way, and not enough on the goals, on the output of the process, then that can that leads to exactly what you said, failed projects or failed or projects that fail in the market.
Right. Okay. So good. So there's one level of failure, which is just measuring the wrong things. Is that a pithy enough summary, or is that missing an important point?
Yeah. Good.
Okay. So there's okay. So one issue is measuring everything. So there's another issue though, which is the world I find myself in, which I find even I'm struggling to explain. So let me try and think aloud a bit to see if I can.
By the way, before you move on, I threw something in the chat that I'd at least like to comment on.
Sure.
And that's I recently wrote a book about it. Free URL is Success Guild, tiny URL. I tried to go deeper into the whole notion of what exactly is success, what exactly is failure, and how do you manage it. And that's this higher level of whether you do stuff or not doesn't matter, but whether you reach the goals you stated you wanted to reach does matter, because that's your definition of a successful outcome in the future. So I wrote a whole book about that for anybody who wants it.
Thank you. So
No problem.
yeah, so okay, so this is good. This is forcing me to be clear about what I
By the way, you
what I'm
see,
thinking.
Alonzo, this is my game. No matter what problem you pose, I've recently written a book about it.
Yes, it is. Yeah, I like to say Tom writes more books in a month than most of us read.
Yeah.
So the interesting thing, okay, so good. So that's level one is the project management. So there's something else that I'm trying to articulate. And I think the thing that is different. So I remember like at Apple, like sitting on these project meetings, and you could tell most of the meetings were pretty well run, right? There were clear goals, clear responsibilities. We made progress, we achieved the goal. And so that was, I would say, good project management. And that's like really essential and somewhat rare, okay? But there's another thing, which is not project management, and I don't have a word for it yet. It is sometimes called IT, although that's really, you know, such a massively overwrought word. So the word that let me go with this word of project monitoring versus employee enablement. It's not a great word, but it's the only one I could think of, right? The point is that I guess it's building the tools that help people do their job. And this is what's weird about the modern world than the world that I lived in, you know, in the 90s and really even the early 2000s, is like, I felt like most of my work was around static artifacts. Like I would create a marketing requirements document. You know, I would create a project plan. I would create a marketing document. And these were like one-shot documents that I would create. People would use them for a month or two or a year or whatever. They'd finish the project and then they would be done. And most of the work, you know, and that was because I was working sort of at a managerial executive level, perhaps. It was around these static documents. Now it feels like everything I get sucked into is a data-driven workflow. And that the quality, and so at that point, like clarity of goals, this is I think a point. There was clarity of goals versus quality of the workflow seems to be the big difference, if I might, is that, you know, if you have the thing is less about how the people interact and more about how the data interacts throughout the system. And I don't know if that's a personal shift or a industry shift or what, but it definitely is weird that at least, you know, recently it feels like all my problems are like data problems rather than personal problems. Does that resonate with anybody? Does that even make sense?
Well, I got two inputs. They're sort of off the cuff and a little bit too quick, but let me throw them in.
Mm-hmm.
So my Musk Methods book, I consider Musk to be a really interesting guy with regard to the methods he uses. And we all know what kind of results he's obtained from them.
Well, let me back up on that though. What I remember Musk being known for is having really, really aggressive and meticulous executive goal setting.
Yep.
Right? And I admire that. He's not necessarily known.
Sort of like Steve Jobs.
Well, yeah, but the thing is, the Steve Jobs had a Tim Cook who was, you know, brilliant at micromanaging the operational details. Right. And that's the other thing, like, so the Steve Jobs, Elon Musk thing is essential. You don't go anywhere. But the Tim Cook piece is the thing that I'm actually thinking about now.
Let me see here. The reason I put this up, there are 100 good ideas here, but the reason I put it up is because you mentioned something about I forget the exact words, but delegation of power to the troops.
Employee enablement.
Yeah. Okay. So so Musk has extreme versions of employee enablement. I can give you more detail off the top of my head, but let's just say that's worth studying, because he doesn't do it by dictating. He might set very demanding goals, but he doesn't micromanage people. He gives them the power to improve their own work process and their own product every bloody day.
Yes, unfortunately, that is my problem.
Okay.
Right, is that, because I think this is a really important distinction, and I may not be using the words correctly, so be patient with me, between employee empowerment and employee enablement. So for example, in an engineering system,
they sound equal to me, but okay.
Okay, so again, maybe I don't have the right words, but I need to play with them to try and make a distinction. So I think about an empowered software engineering team. Okay, that's one where everyone can choose the tool that suits them best. And everyone has great latitude over what they're doing. And can choose their own language, choose their own compiler, choose their own text editor. That's an empowered environment. They can figure out how to, they're given a task and they solve that task using the best tools available. And as long as it meets spec, you're good, right? That's what I think of as an empowered culture. And it's really focused on the individual creative, maximizing their productivity. And so let me just kind of define that. Let me throw this is good to define these terms. And so employee empowerment is giving workers maximum latitude to solve a problem to spec.
Good. I'm glad you didn't put the tool thing in there, because that's only part of the latitude they need. The other part is choice of strategies or technologies.
Right.
And there's even a third part, like how they organize the work between people on the team. But
well, I said that gets closer, right? So because the thing that's interesting to me is that when this is where I think the world it feels like it has changed, at least to me in my bubble, is that in a work that is, what is the term they use in like supercomputers? Isn't there like a ratio of communication to computation?
right. That sounds interesting, but I don't know it.
Well, so it's like in the olden days, you would send a piece of work to a processor and it would chug on it for a long time, and then it would send a piece of data back, right? And so, if you had to wait a few microseconds to send a kilobyte of data, that's fine, because it would take the CPU a long time. As CPUs have gotten faster and faster, the ratio of computation to communication keeps decreasing. And so what you find is that most systems today, most processes are actually bus limited rather than versus CPU limited. Does that ring a bell?
Well, it's an interesting concept. I haven't looked into it, but
okay, yeah. So but this is what I've seen is that, like, so when it was a case of you have to get someone a piece of work and then they sit and work on it for like 2 weeks or 6 weeks or months or whatever, then making sure that the individual is maximally empowered to do their work is the top priority. But the stuff I'm doing today is actually the inverse, is that usually the actual work being done is like 5 or 10 minutes of one person's time, or at most an hour. But the hard part is all the moving the data between stations and getting into the right format for this person to know what to do. And that's where, so the problem is mostly sort of marshaling the right data in the right place, in the right format, so that the person, the worker A knows what to do, B can record it efficiently, and maybe that's it. So, like, for example, without going to machine, like, I have a guy who has to process devices, and the work he does is sitting there and plugging USB cables into a device and making sure it works properly. But the hard part is getting the right information about the devices in a format that he can very efficiently check devices in and out and record what happened to them so that the rest of the organization knows what's going on. It's the interface rather than the processor that's actually, because what happens is that either like he can be really efficient and then he has a big pile of devices without any records, and then the throughput of the whole system sucks, right? Is the throughput is.
By the way,
Yeah.
Ernie, the organization doesn't have to know what's going on in terms of what's going on inside the black box. That's so much detail in an organization like, say, Tesla, that it is irrelevant. What they need to know is whether we are making progress towards our long-term goals.
So that's where I disagree slightly, in that it depends what you mean by the organization.
Okay.
Right? I think that's the difference.
Anybody outside of the core team doing something is, for me, the organization.
Okay, this is why my life sucks. Because I am not in that definition of the organization. At the executive view, that's absolutely what people care about. And this is why my life sucks. But in order to get the executives the information that they want, I don't have black boxes. I have white boxes of human beings who are doing crap. And I have to get into the worm's eye view of each individual person and say, what is your life like? And this is what this like data therapy process, and say, how are you doing your job? And what is the essence of what you are trying to do? And how do I design your personal workflow so that it is both efficient for you and optimal from the organizational data collection perspective? And that's the thing that I'm spending all my time on, that I cannot explain to the executives why I haven't generated the report yet, because I don't have any language to talk about this yet, because they think it's just a black box. It's like, no, because the nature of these problems is so data driven and data intensive, minor changes in data format can either ruin somebody's life because they don't have the right data they need, or screw up the top level reporting because it doesn't match consistently with the high level reporting. And this idea of a data centric or a data driven workflow is like, the thing that's weird about it is that it's like really hard to do. But if you get it right, then all these other things that you care about should immediately follow, right? Is that you'll actually have all the right data being collected in the right way at the right time, so that you can actually create reliable quality progress metrics. And it's this, but this is the hard thing that I'm trying to figure out how to talk about as well as do. Did that make any sense?
Well, I want to get back. Your point 5 said something about clarifying objectives or goals, right? So the Quantier booklet that I put in the chat is sort of my answer to how do you in practice clarify things so that you have a high level thing to track outside the white box.
Right. But I was arguing against the clarity of goals is my point. Not just saying that. Yeah, that's my thing.
I haven't worked against clarity of goals yet. I'll have to do that.
So this is the thing, right? And or let me be more precise. And actually, if you could write this book, this is one I would love to give to my bosses if we could figure this out. Is that this is what's called the strategy gap sometimes, or the air sandwich. Have you heard this phrase?
Nope.
I think Carrie Newhoff may be the one who introduced it to me. So the idea is that executives sit in a room and they work really, really hard to come up with a right strategy that matches the business environment, the capabilities of the organization. They, bring in a consultant like you to think about what are the key metrics they should focus on, what are the things that really matter and drive it. And they come up with a really beautiful, well thought of vision of what the problem is, how to solve it, how to measure progress. And then they give it to the organization, say, implement this. And everything falls apart. And the reason is that the semantics that the executives care about does not match the syntax of the workers who are doing their job. And unless you translate, and that's this is what, translate executive semantics into employee syntax. I will fix the spelling as
We can't see what you're writing.
yes.
Yeah.
Well.
Got it. Now we can see your misspellings at least.
Yeah. Into employee syntax. Right, and
Okay,
that's the interesting thing.
Let me throw in a hypothesis. This value or objective thing I'm talking about is intended to be an interface between the executives and the workers. In other words, it's what the executives want and what the workers must aspire to deliver. And that's what I call a high-level objective.
Right, okay, this is what employees aspire to deliver. That's fine. That's still part of my air sandwich, right? And this is the interesting problem is that, what was the saying? There is a saying from the Gospels where Jesus accused the Pharisees of laying heavy burdens upon people and not lifting a finger to help them, right? And this is the thing that is, I'm struggling to find the right language for, but it's one to tell people like, this is like the thing that you must do in order to win. It's like, great. But like, I have this problem all the time. I can agree that that is a good thing to do. I have no clue how to do that and the right trade-offs to make in my current reality to achieve that result versus the result I'm getting now. And in a world where these mandates come out like once a year, that's not a big deal. I can take a month or two to work with my manager and figure it out on my own, okay? But when these mandates come out every month or every week, then the stress and learning that previously was internalized and I could manage it suddenly becomes the key blocking factor. So like knowing goals versus knowing how to change my life to achieve those without losing anything important, right?
Mhm.
This is
Yep.
this is
Okay,
the firm's idea.
can I interject with an idea there?
Sure.
There's this idea of, let's call it delegation of decision-making or design power to the workers. Now, there is another option, and that is that you decompose the strategy planning or architecture planning at one level, give it to, let's call it the strategy planner architect, and they find the clever things to do, and they hand them on to the workers and say, do these things, and we should be able to track your progress towards the higher level goals.
Right.
In other words, the worker may not, in some sense, be capable of finding the solutions, but somebody else at some level, called engineer architect, should be trained to do so.
Right, and I still react against that vision of reality. Like that does not match the world I am currently living in. Because in the world I'm currently living in, like there is no atomic hierarchical decomposition of the problem. The problem is quantum.
Say that again. There is no something
There's
decomposition.
no atomic hierarchical decomposition.
Ah, I just
Actually-
happen to have a few books on that subject.
About the
Yeah,
lack of
so-
hierarchical decomposition?
Yeah, I'm it's one of my favorite themes, decomposition. Yeah, I'll get the decomposition things out, and
But
Alonzo
it-
was going to say
But
something
I'm speaking against decomposition. Do you have anything that talks about what happens
against
instead of
decomposition.
Yes,
No,
this is my point.
I'm going to get stuff out about how to do decomposition
Yes,
in a
and-
very
well-
advanced way.
So maybe we'll make this a debate for next month, because I'm actually speaking against decomposition. What I'm
Okay.
saying
Well,
is that when you have loosely coupled
Ernie,
systems,
Ernie, give Alonzo a chance.
All right. So when it comes to the pros or cons to decomposition, that whole thing, I'm not going to jump into that argument, at least not yet, because I strongly suspected that as with so many answers in life, the real correct answer is it depends. It depends on people in the organization, the hierarchy, and all that sort. And that's sort of the big thought that was in my mind as we were discussing this, because it does depend. And every organization is different. And if we're looking for a solution that sort of goes as a one-size-fits-all type of thing, I think that's, that'll work great for a handful, and we'll probably miss a lot. But what I was thinking of was actually thinking back to the old Microsoft Office suite. You had Word, Excel, PowerPoint, all of those designed to do a specific job. You had Access, a few others. But it seems like there was no software tool built to solve this particular problem, at least in a great way. We have tools like Confluence and Jira that try to evolve or expand their scope to solve this problem as well. But I think that they're failing, and I think that one of the key reasons why they're failing is because they were missing some of one of the core ingredients that made Excel or just spreadsheets in general such a success early on. And that was the flexibility that was built into it. Like, I think that when it comes to delegating or the act of presenting and delegating tasks, step one might be to just focus on clarity and ease of use. Focus on the confusion problem with the tool that is, I'll go with, conceptually simple as Excel. It's a grid. You put tiny boxes, you put things in boxes, and you can make calculations based off of what's in those boxes. Something that's conceptually simple, but that can expand to cover or is flexible enough to cover just the inherent dynamics in setting this up for an organization. Those are my thoughts. Is that,
Can you summarize
that?
them as a short statement? What are your thoughts?
Excel.
I heard it all. It sounded good, but summarize.
I'm fine.
Excel for org structures.
Yeah, so I think this is the interesting thing. I as much as I hate Excel, I think I actually like that analogy, because the thing about Excel is that everyone can make it do what they want, right? Is that they can make it look, they can put up, with enough massaging and mutating and mutilation of the data, I can get it down to a report or a pivot or a summary that has the information I need that I want to focus on, right? And the reason that sucks is that it's literally locked on somebody's desk. And that one person has their one view, which is then out of sync, right? What are the hard problems in computer science? Cache coherency, naming things. The two hard problems: cache coherency, naming things, and off by one errors, right? And this is the problem: is that people have historically had to choose between personalized, customized workflows that made the individual productive, or standardized homogeneous workflows that made it easier to generate reports. Right?
Yep.
And what I'm arguing for is we need personalized collaborative workflows. So the thing I wrote down, maybe this is a good a pitch, is this idea of tri-scope design. Is like there's the top-down view starting with the executive strategy on downward. There's the bottom-up strategy, which is employee workflows, like making the individuals productive, and then the executives get whatever reports tend to be the side effect of that. And the hypothesis is there is this, data platform decisioneering process, which has to actually internalize both ends of the spectrum, right? I need to understand everything about what the executives want and freaking everything about what each employee actually does, and then design this platform in the middle that the employees can do what they need to do efficiently in a way that also generates the data that the executives need to make decisions about it. And that's what's hard, is I have to understand both the executive pain, the employee pain, and for lack of a better term, the data pain in order to build this thing. And most people like to focus on their pain and ignore the other two. Did that make sense?
Okay.
Tom?
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm writing something down, so my mind is temporarily.
Okay, it's blocking.
Okay.
Okay. It's blocking while it's writing to disk. Alonzo, you can talk.
all right. Let's see. So it does make sense. I think basically what we're really talking about is removing the jobs of the middle managers, so automating those jobs more or less, which I think is a good thing. I think that that makes me that would inherently make things more efficient, because in my experience is things being gummed up in middle management, that tends to be one of the big reasons why projects get slowed down.
Oh my gosh, can I just take a moment there? You may have just articulated my pain, because I realized, like, don't we have managers to help people figure out what they're doing? But the answer is we don't. Because one, we don't invest in managers, which is one issue. But I think it's also rational because, like, there's no manager who actually understands this thing. This is right. In the old hierarchical world, that is what middle managers did. They translated and occasionally pushed back upstream. And we seem to be moving to a post-hierarchical network organizational structure, which is why these old solutions are breaking down and our language has not yet caught up.
Yeah, it almost seems like a part of the problem, or actually, let's use Apple as an example for this. By the way, we're getting pretty close to a 2-minute warning, so I'll make this quick. To my understanding, one of the things that made them unique was that aside from having almost no middle managers, like basically had tech leads and that sort, but the people at the VP level on down had a surprisingly large amount of information about the very things that the employees were doing. So for them, this whole discussion would be moot, because they've done the hard work themselves to know intimate details about what all of their employees under their umbrella are working on. For the most part, that takes a lot of time, a lot of effort.
Yeah, but you're right, and it worked really well at Apple. But also the cadence was roughly quarterly, where you had synchronization points with the rest of the organization. And so you had enough time to socialize it. I'm curious whether the velocity has changed now.
That's a good question. But the point is that what we would probably want to do is basically to figure out a way to surface the employee level information, allow them to have that level of details without working 80 to 100 hour weeks to get those.
Yes, there was that price that was paid because you basically spent 40 hours a week doing your work and 40 hours a week communicating with your peers and management. And that was how we solved that problem at Apple, which is not sustainable. All right, Tom, you got 30 seconds left. Do you want to say something?
No, have a good week.
All right, we will leave it there. This was good. I don't know if I'll be able to do this again before another month, but this was really helpful. Thank you so much.
No
And
problem.
we can continue on the chat if you have any other insights. Bye.
Bye-bye.
See ya.